I remember that night in the hospital like a heavy stone in my chest. The first thing I felt was burning inside my lungs. It hurt to breathe. Each breath sounded like broken glass. I was 25, but I felt small and helpless, like a child again. The machines blinked and hummed. Nurses walked quietly. My body shook. The nurse told me I was lucky to be alive. I did not feel lucky. I felt trapped between life and death. When my parents walked in, they did not come to hold my hand. They did not come to help. My mother clicked in high heels and looked at me like I was dirt on the floor. Her mouth curled like she tasted something bad. My father stood with his hands in his pockets and the same mean look he always had. The oxygen machine hissed. My father said the noise bothered him. Then he looked at me and said I was a shame. He said we wasted money on me. My throat was dry. I tried to beg in a tiny, cracked voice. I asked them not to do anything. He put his hand on the machine like it was his toy. He said, "Don't waste oxygen on trash. Save it for someone useful." He turned the dial down. I felt my chest close. I clawed at the sheets and tried to scream, but only a weak wheeze came out. I could not see well. The nurse ran in and said he could not touch the equipment. He waved her away. He stopped only when the alarms screamed. Then other nurses came running. My mother bent close with sharp perfume and whispered, "If you die, the world will have one less burden." She smiled like she had given me a gift. Then she left. Her heels clicked away and everything felt colder. I wanted to die that night because of their words, but I did not. The nurses fixed the oxygen and scolded my parents in the hall. I made a promise to myself. I would not die in that bed for them. If I lived, I would not go back to being small and asking for love. I would not wait for their crumbs. I would get strong in a quiet, careful way. I would make them see that the person they called trash could burn bright when pushed. Pneumonia left scars in my lungs. The doctors said recovery would be slow. While my body healed, my mind changed. I remembered my father's hand on the dial and how my mother laughed. Those memories did not make me sad. They lit a fire inside. I had nothing to go home to. No one came to bring soup or hold my hand. Strangers brought me more kindness in 2 weeks than my parents had in 25 years. A night nurse slipped me extra water. A janitor told me a silly joke to make me smile. An old woman in the next bed mouthed, "Keep fighting," when she saw me cough. Strangers cared. My parents did not. One morning I overheard my parents talking in the hallway. They were not talking about me. They were talking about money. My mother said, "If she dies, the insurance pays us, right?" My father laughed. I felt the floor tug when I clenched my fists so hard. Rage moved through my body like hot metal. They had not only ignored me. They had been waiting for me to fail. They wanted me gone. It hit me like a stone. They were betting on my death like a lottery ticket. When I left the hospital, I signed the papers with shaky hands. I did not go home to them. I rented a tiny basement apartment with the small savings I had from part-time jobs. It was cold in winter and the paint peeled. It smelled like old food sometimes. But it was mine. It felt like freedom. My body was weak, but my head was sharp. At night I coughed into a pillow and planned quietly. Not loud, not angry plans. Calm and careful plans. Step 1 was to be independent. I would not crawl back to them begging for a roof. I took a job answering phones at a small office. The pay was little, but I saved. While they spent money on my sister's dresses and trips, I put pennies into a jar that grew into my escape. Step 2 was to learn. I read about the law. I read about wills, trusts, and how money moves in families. I read case after case of people who thought they could cheat a child and then lost everything. Step 3 was patience. Every scar in my lungs reminded me to wait. Revenge that makes a scene is easy. Real change needs quiet timing. One night at work, an email came to my inbox that was not meant for me. A contractor had CC'd the wrong person. The message showed renovations at my parents' house. The money came from an account for my medical care. They had taken it. I sat very still. There it was, proof. I had them with the truth in my hand. My heart pounded, but my hands did not shake. I stayed up late and planned. I would not hurt them with fists. I would use facts and the law. I would let their greed pull the rope that would loop around them. I wrote letters. I called numbers. I spoke to the contractor who had been cheated and gave him the proof. I told the insurance board about the missing money. I collected little pieces of the truth from neighbors, from old tenants who had been bullied, from people who whispered about the way my parents stole. I organized everything. I filed complaints. I sent copies to the right places. It felt strange to be gentle and fierce at the same time. But it worked. Months later my mother called with fake sweetness. She said they were having a family dinner and I should come. She was careful to sound kind on the phone. I said yes. I wanted to be there the day the truth walked into their house. I wore an old dress, the one I had been able to buy after months of saving. My lungs were scarred and they hurt when I laughed. My sister spun in a new dress and bragged about a trip to Europe. My father talked big about his business like a king on a stage. My mother smiled like someone who never worried. I sat and listened. I smiled small. They did not know I had already moved a step ahead. The insurance board was watching. The contractor had been paid back and told the truth. Neighbors who had been too scared to speak before came forward. The house they had made from other people's money began to wobble. I watched the way their faces changed when the first knock at the door came the next week. Investigators stood on the porch. My father tried to roar and bluff. My mother tried to look innocent. It did not help. Accounts froze. Papers were seized. Contractors demanded money back. The proud image they kept was breaking into small sharp pieces. People began to talk in town. The whispers grew into loud talk. My sister came to my apartment crying with makeup run down her face. She screamed that I ruined everything. I opened the door and told the truth. They did not like the sound of truth now because it sounded like what had always been true about them. They came to my office later. My father slammed his hand on the counter and said I was trying to humiliate them. He shouted the same words he always used: trash, worthless, should have died in the hospital. This time his words did not break me. Coworkers stood behind me. People who knew me and respected me watched him. He choked on silence. My mother's smirk fell away. Her voice that used to cut me like glass was just a small sound in that room. The insurance board sent an official letter: fraud charges pending. Their home was taken to pay back the money. My sister's dresses and trips stopped. My father's business reputation crumbled. Standing there, breathing steady, with the scars in my lungs, I felt the weight leave my shoulders. It was not about showing them pain. It was about telling the truth loud enough that the world could hear. I did not need to shout. I did not need to fight. I watched as the people who tried to kill me with neglect and cruelty were left with nothing. They had called me trash. In the end, they were the ones standing with garbage bags full of their clothes. I stood taller than before. I did not dance on their ruin. But I felt a deep, quiet justice. The world after that was not easy. I had to learn how to trust again. I had to learn how to sleep without loud alarms in the middle of the night. I had to accept my scars. My lungs still hurt sometimes. I had days when the cough woke me and I felt small like before. But I had also learned how to feed myself. I learned how to be my own family. People who had been kind in the hospital became my friends. The night nurse who had given me water visited sometimes. The janitor's jokes made me laugh months later, and the old woman across the hall sent me a card one winter. Small acts of kindness built a small family around me. I saved money and went to classes at night. I studied more about law and business so other people could not take advantage of me. I learned to speak without fear. I found a new job that paid better. I moved from the basement to a small apartment with sunlight. In the mornings the sun would come in and my chest would not always burn. It felt like waking up from a long winter. I learned to cook simple meals. I learned to make a bed that did not feel like a hospital bed. I learned that being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Sometimes I think about the exact moment everything changed for me. It was not the machines or the needles. It was when I decided I would not be their ending. That was the moment I stopped hoping for their love and started making a life for myself. The plan I made in that small apartment was not only about taking back what was mine. It was about making something new from what I had, my work, my home, my rules. I wanted a life that I did not have to beg for. I also learned something hard. Revenge feels sweet for a while. It feels like a hot drink on a cold night. But the thing that kept me warm afterward was not the fall of my parents. It was the people who stood with me and the life I built. The joy that filled my days came from small honest things, paying my own bills, planting a small herb on the windowsill, going for a walk and not being afraid of the air I breathed. I took a cooking class and learned to make food that filled me with pride. I bought a second-hand book and read about people who had been hurt and healed. I volunteered to help someone who needed a kind word. These things made me softer, not weak. There were moments when anger came back. A smell would remind me of my mother's perfume. A knock would make me wait for bad news. I had to learn ways to move the anger through me and not let it sit. I wrote letters I never sent. I cried into pillows. I hit a punching bag at a gym until my hands hurt. I breathed slowly and counted. These small tools helped me keep steady. People often ask me if I forgave them. Forgiveness is complicated. I forgave myself first. I forgave myself for believing that one day they would love me if I proved myself. I forgave myself for the years I spent hoping. Forgiving them took time. I stopped wishing bad things on them. The law had already done what it needed to do. I let the legal system and truth fix what it could. For my heart, I chose to move on. Forgiveness felt like putting down a heavy bag I had carried too long. It did not mean I forgot. It did not mean I let them back in. It meant I was done letting their cruelty live inside me. In time I used what I learned to help others. I spoke to people who felt small and told them about the rules and the ways to protect themselves. I showed others how to collect facts and use them. I helped a neighbor who had been tricked by a landlord. I gave advice to someone who needed to fight for their right to care. These things made me feel useful in a way I had never felt when I was trying to earn the love of people who never gave it. Sometimes I go back to the hospital in my mind. I remember the bright lights and the way machines blink. I remember the smell of antiseptic and the gentle voices of the nurses who stayed. Those memories do not hurt me the way they used to. They remind me of the night I chose myself. They remind me that even when the body is weak, the mind can decide to be brave. I do not tell this story to make people hate my parents. I tell it so others who feel lonely and small can know something important: you are not trash. Even if people call you names, you are not those names. You can choose to survive. You can choose to build a life. You can learn the rules that protect you. You can make quiet plans and wait for the right time to speak. The world will not always give you what you deserve, but you can take steps to make your own life. Now when I breathe, I can feel the cold air come in and warm up in my chest. It is not perfect. I still have scars. Sometimes the cough comes back. But my breath is my own. I have friends who love me. I have a job that respects me. I have a small plant on my sill that I water every morning and a pot of soup I make when it rains. I do not want revenge anymore like I did that first year. What I want now is peace. A soft, steady life. A life where I do not have to be small to get something from someone else. If I could tell my younger self anything, it would be this: you deserve care. You deserve to be seen. You do not have to die to prove a point. You can fight with your mind and with law and with truth. You can save pennies and they will become your ladder out. You can stand up by being calm and smart and patient. The loudest victory is not always the one that screams. Sometimes it is the quiet life you make that says, I survived, and I will keep living. I still get moments when anger knocks on my door. When it does, I breathe. I remember the janitor's joke and laugh. I think of the old woman who mouthed, keep fighting, and I feel small hands of strangers holding me. I remember the night I chose to live for myself. That night taught me a fierce lesson: pain can break you, or it can teach you how to grow. I chose to grow. This is my story. I was gasping for air in a hospital room. My parents wanted me to die. I did not. I learned law, saved money, and used the truth. I watched them lose everything they built on lies. I built a life on small, honest things. I learned to forgive myself and to help others. I am still healing, but I am strong. My lungs have scars, and my heart has lessons. I breathe, and that breath is my victory. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Also comment where you're watching from.